Hello, my name is Christopher Ng and my presentation is focused on the topic of conservation biology. The purpose of this presentation is to be introductory in the topic of conservation biology and hopefully get others interested in seeing how conservation biology works and how it is implemented. Here's the outline for my presentation. What we will discuss. We'll be going over what exactly is conservation biology, how to formulate management under principles of conservation biology, and move on to some organizations and some examples of conservation biology on the islands. What is conservation biology? It is the multidisciplinary study that has been developed to address the loss of biological diversity. It is exactly defined as the scientific study of the amount of biodiversity, how human activities are impacting it, and how best to maintain it and prevent its loss. Biodiversity includes genetic diversity within a species, the diversity of species, and the diversity of communities across landscapes. Why is it important to maintain biodiversity? It is an important component of ecosystems, and just focusing on the practical reasons, maintaining high levels of biodiversity helps to provide and maintain ecosystem services. Examples of ecosystem services are water purification, generation and maintenance of soils, pollination of crops, climate regulation, and flood control, to name a few. Our species, like all other species, relies on nature to sustain ourselves. Overall, we make use of nature and rely on it for a variety of things. How do we implement management? A quick way to explain this is using a simplified hypothetical example of the Hawaiian honeycreepers. We will specifically mention the iwi. Your first step is to define the problem, in this case declining populations of this particular bird species. Generally, as you set up your plan, you'll look at all possibilities, especially when dealing with an endangered species. But for now, we will continue on with a simplified hypothetical case. We will then create a focused objective for our problem. In this case, we want to maintain or increase population size. We will then propose how we will go about this problem, which we will use the example of creating fencing in their native ranges. We'll create a hypothesis. In this case, we'll hypothesize that fencing will improve population size by keeping out predators. You'll then try and predict all potential outcomes. You then try and pick the best course of action to take to effectively get your targeted results. This can be a very challenging with limited data and knowledge, as well as can be highly debated as to which actions you should take. You'll then monitor your actions and collect data, then finally publish your work or update any knowledge or results found. From your results, you'll update your plan and repeat this cycle and adapt to any new information. This process is a general way of approaching conservation management and can be far more complex and context dependent on each situation. There are many different variations that are similar to this kind of approach. Shifting gears now, we'll look at 3 different conservation organizations that I found interesting and wanted to give a shout out for. The first is Pacific Rim Conservation, the second, North Shore Community Land Trust, and the final one, Hawaiian Association of Watershed Partnerships. Starting with the first one, Pacific Rim Conservation is an organization that is known to do a lot of work in bird conservation. They had released their 2019 annual report, which is a document which shows all the work they have accomplished and any ongoing research. I recommend you check it out on their website, where you can see some of their results on the bottom right corner. They have assisted and participated in numerous studies and collaborations amongst other organizations. They monitor and translocate seabirds for population recovery. One notable project is the restoration of Kaena Point with predator removal and fencing. Their mission is to maintain and restore native bird diversity, populations, and ecosystems in Hawaii and the Pacific region. North Shore Community Land Trust is an organization that manages large amounts of land, specifically 60,000 acres of agricultural land and over 30 miles of shoreline. Their goals are to maintain the habitats and work with landowners to do this. They maintain habitats by protecting the wildlife, the cultural or historical sites. They protect the natural resources of those areas from commercial development or any kind other activities that could disrupt or pollute those lands. The North Shore Community Land Trust took over about 6 locations, which are named in this slide at the bottom. Finally, Hawaii Association of Watershed Partnerships is the last organization we'll discuss. This organization overlooks the quality of watersheds across 10 islands. Watersheds have important hydrological functions in our ecosystem on the islands. Watersheds help to conserve water, provide support to streams, rivers, lakes, and groundwater sources, as well as provide healthy soil for crops and livestock, while also providing habitat for other organisms. Some of this may seem obvious, but while looking into these organizations in this topic, there are quite a few trends that most of these organizations follow. There's a high demand to get people to volunteer to accomplish successful conservation. You have to find ways to sustain your objectives by raising funds or gathering support. Passing laws in legislature help to give power to these organizations to protect these ecosystems. Many organizations collaborate for good reason. Power in numbers and voicing out your concerns is important. Finally, each organization has their own goals despite working towards conservation. How can you get involved? To get involved, simply volunteering and helping out in organizations is one of the best ways to help a cause. Contacting coordinators and collaborating with organizations is another great way to spread awareness. Following guidelines of preventing the spread of invasive species and fundraising are great ways in actively helping. Why should you get involved? There are many large issues still prevalent that affect conservation of living organisms. Collaboration is definitely one of the most important components for a successful project, and volunteering can be a very important educational tool to understanding the natural world that we live in. Thank you for your time. These are my references. Thank you again, and stay safe.